What does one say to an ancient Nephilim ghost?
I suppose you start with...
Hey, Phil Connors!
Ned?
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy, and we're back with another video. Diablo 3 Season 29 has a Paragon cap of 800 points. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? That's what we're going to talk about today. Positives, negatives. We've played the season for just over 2 weeks now. Going to give my thoughts, and I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this, because I think moving forwards with this game, that is probably going to be a controversial issue. Should we have a Paragon cap in Season 30? If so, what should it be? Before we do get going though, guys, as always, a thumbs up brightens my day. Now, this is a funny topic for me because having created content for this game for about 4 years now, and for hanging around in the scene before that for a couple of years, just listening to people, the number one complaints always, it got views, it got attention, it got interest, was botting and the just huge disparity between sad people who botted and those who didn't. So obviously the way Paragon works in Diablo 3 is each Paragon point past 800 just gives you 5 main stat. It's a source of memes, it's what other ARPG fans of other games used to beat Diablo 3 over the head with, because it's boring and it doesn't add terribly much. The thing is though, if you bot and you have a computer script that runs the game for you, and you can essentially add these Paragon points all the time, 24/7, without even needing to play, as people get up to like several thousand Paragon, the increased power that you have for damage makes a big difference. It also makes a big difference for some builds that are squishy, because the way that the Paragon scaling works, it helps out toughness far more than it does damage, to be perfectly honest. Now, back in the day, people used to complain when we saw people with like 3,000 Paragon, 4,000 Paragon in a season, but given the power creep in the game, it's very easy, I think, for somebody to boss and get 6,000-7,000 Paragon in a season, and that's just nuts. And personally, as a kind of casual player of games, maybe 2 hours a day, maybe 4 hours a day, sometimes only half an hour, 60 minutes, depends what's going on in my life. Realistically, it created quite a power imbalance. Now, of course, botting does give other advantages. It gives infinite keys for fishing to clear those amazing maps that you might get. It also gives you pretty much perfect gear, infinite material. So it's not like botting doesn't give an advantage with the Paragon cap. It's just with the Paragon cap, of course, it is a lot less. So that's kind of where we are with Paragon. So let's look at the positives of putting in a Paragon cap and keeping it in this game moving forwards. Well, first off, I think it is completely undeniable. I think everybody would have to say it gives a degree of fairness. Going back to the botting, some people bot, it's cheating, and we now have a level playing field. Everybody has the same. So it is more of a kind of skill test. So somebody with an 800 Paragon build is playing against somebody else with an 800 Paragon build, if you're wanting to talk about the leaderboards. So it is fair for everybody. People can come, particularly this season with the limit being so low, you can come, you can put in your 20 hours, 30 hours, whatever it is, depending on your build and how experienced you are with the game, reach this 800 Paragon cap and then have a little go. And I think actually that comes into a second positive, which is the Paragon cap of 800 is certainly achievable by pretty much anybody who is able to look up a build guide, follow it, and stick that 20 to 30 hours in. No problemo. Probably even less to get to 800 if you pick a class that is a fast start or that really crushes greater rifts and can get you that XP. And I kind of like that. I do think as this game moves forwards, we've got to be realistic. We are in a Diablo 4 world. Most people have probably left the player base, and people will dip into this game for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 or 4, it just kind of depends what else is going on in the ARPG space. But to have a Paragon cap that is achievable, I think does offer an advantage, because it cuts out the pressure of having to like play definitely at the season start. So I do think that is a positive. I would also say this season is more fun with the Paragon cap. Fun, of course, is a subjective thing. This is how I feel about it. This is how I think about it. I can't objectively say for you or for somebody else what is fun. But the reason I think it's more fun is because the meta this season has been to crush GR90 just as fast as you can to get the gear drops, to either get Forgotten Souls to do reforging, or to just generally improve your gear. Now that has improved my experience playing the game, because instead of grinding Paragon, we're just doing 90, we're doing it very fast. I like that kind of fast, fun, arcadey playstyle. I also think fun adds to the season because we've got a lot more build diversity. So instead of me grinding my face off on a meteor wizard for a lot of my playtime to boost my Paragon, it doesn't really matter what I play because I can't get any more Paragon points. I can only improve my gear. There are many ways to improve the gear, and ultimately I can now go off and play almost kind of whatever class I want, whatever build I want, and it doesn't really matter. There's no kind of like downside. And I guess that ties into my next positive, which is it kind of makes the season feel a little bit like there's less pressure. I don't have this gnawing feeling that I should always be going and playing a GR 135 speed wizard to boost up my Paragon. As I say, I can mess about on my Crusader, a Witch Doctor, do some GR 90s, 80s, 100s, whatever it is, and there is kind of no pressure to it. So personally for me, I think the increased build diversity, the fairness, the achievability of it, and the lack of pressure personally mean that I think there are a lot of positives for a Paragon cap. But of course, let's be fair, let's talk about the negatives, and I do think there are some. Now, the first one really is probably a little bit of a minor one. It doesn't apply to many players, which is it kind of makes fishing for that dream map even more important, because you can't use your Paragon to kind of power through. Now, it may well be the case, and I suspect it probably is, that a good fish, so getting at festering woods with the conduit, makes way more difference regardless of your Paragon cap or not. But again, it gives those bosses with those infinite keys a little bit more of an advantage. So maybe it puts a bit more emphasis on fishing, maybe it doesn't, but I think that's possibly a small negative. Now, a much bigger negative is why carry on playing the game past 800 Paragon? Well, that falls back into fun. You should only play this game if you're having fun, but some people find fun by adding to the build very slowly with this Paragon grind, and obviously if you have the cap at 800, some people just don't find it fun to play past that because they're getting Paragon points which they used to be able to assign to make their characters better and stronger, and now they can't. So there is a little bit of a negative, as in it really does condense the season, and I think a lot of players will get to the 800 and then be like, well, what do I do now? Why am I even bothering? Now, that also makes kind of the game potentially less fun if you do enjoy adding that main stat and growing in power. And that kind of leads on to the next thing, which is, and I have noticed this myself having set up several classes this season, you can't steamroller things. So normally, if I got 2000 Paragon and I want to set up a new character, an alt Witch Doctor for example, I can stick my 2000 Paragon on, I can have crap gear, I can still steamroller some stuff enough to get my Witch Doctor going. You can't really do that now because you are limited to this 800 Paragons, and ultimately it does mean that you've got to have better gear to play other classes. So again, maybe that's a little bit of a negative. That's perhaps maybe more an issue with the limit of the Paragon than, let's say, having a Paragon cap in general. The last negative, and I have noticed this, is it probably really kills grouping and any kind of social aspect in the game. Most groups generally just want to grind XP, that's what they want to do. They want to do those rifts in 60 to 120 seconds, as high as possible to gain as much Paragon as possible, as well as getting your gems, your shards, items, that kind of thing. And I think ultimately having a Paragon cap of 800, because you can reach it solo in a minimal amount of playtime, I think it really does kind of kill the grouping aspect of the game. So I think, again, a Paragon cap completely probably harms groups, but again, depends on the level, I think, a little bit. So they're the negatives. I think it kind of maybe kills people's motivation to play the season for any length of time. It means you can't really steamroll stuff, and I think it does have a negative impact on the social side of the game. Now, let's say we keep the Paragon cap. Well, the next question is what level to set it at. 800 Paragon is ridiculously too low. It is just far, far too low. I'm going to give you a range that I think it could well be in. On the low end, I think 1200 Paragon, because I'm at like 1130, 1140, and I've pretty much just played GR90. A couple of pushes up on the Wizard and the Demon Hunter, but 99% of my time this season I spent leveling and playing GR19, setting up builds. So 1200 I think is a very achievable, so going back onto the positive, it's achievable and everybody can do it. At the higher end, I wouldn't really want them to set it much past 2000, because again, I think you then straying into the realms of making people grind for Paragon, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best and fun thing. Now don't get me wrong, that's quite a wide range, because the difference between 1200 Paragon and 2000 is a lot. That's 800 main stat, times by 5. It's it's a decent amount of power, but it kind of does give a reduction in some of the negatives, because people can grind those Paragon points and then use them on all of their builds. Just as a little aside, I remember a while ago the dev team were talking about they wanted every build to be capable of doing, I think it was GR 130 at about 3000 Paragon points. So that is something to bear in mind. Now, I don't really want the Paragon setting at 3000, because I think ultimately, if you're going to put a cap in, I think it does have to be a reasonable limit, because otherwise you're not really, I think, getting the advantages here. So to wrap this up, my thoughts. One thing I would suggest is maybe we could implement the Paragon cap in solo self-found mode only. I have enjoyed that mode, playing completely on my own, finding everything, not having to group, not having to like trade and swap things. I think that would be a potential if we could split it so that the Paragon cap was SSF only, because then that would allow the social and grouping side of the game to thrive. People can still grind their Paragon points endlessly. SSF people probably care more about fairness than non-SSF players, because realistically they're wanting to have their own individual experience, and I think with a Paragon cap that could be a way to go for that. I probably for next season, season 30, would try it at about 1500. We know we're getting the Altar of Rights back, so all the builds are going to be much more powerful next season, so 1500 I think is still fitting in with that achievable range. It's still offering some fun, as in you could still probably, largely speaking, play a bunch of different builds, and it doesn't matter too much, because 1500 Paragon, with some effort you will get it. If you want to grind it faster you can do, but ultimately if you're going to play the season for a few weeks, even on a solo self-found, you can get to the 1500, and then I'd review it from there and say, look, was that a success? Do we think that limit should go up? Do we think it should go down? But that's kind of what I would do. Season 30, have it in SSF and have it set at 1500. Those are my thoughts on the Paragon cap, guys. Let me know what you think. What would you do with this game? I've been the Filthy Casual. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take it easy, guys. Peace.